Good morning, mathematicians. We are looking at our section B checkpoint, and in this checkpoint we are going to be thinking about dividing with our partial quotients. In number 1, we are to find the value of 966 divided by 23, and we shall explain or show our reasoning. Well, I know that the 966 represents the dividend. That is the whole thing that is going to be broken up and divided, and it's going to be divided into groups of 23. Now, as we have seen many a time, I like to go ahead and write down some of the facts that I know, and I'm going to start with this. 23 times 2 would equal what? Well, it would equal 46. Okay, if I know that to be true, I also know that 23 times 20 would equal 460. Okay, I could go ahead and start with that fact, or I could get a little bit closer to that entire dividend of 966. So let's go ahead and let's think about what would 23 times 3 be. Well, 23 times 3 would be 69, and I know that 23 times 30, therefore, would be 690. Let's go ahead and start with that. That feels like a number that would help me to chip away at this a little bit, right? Certainly it's not all the way to my 966, but we're getting close, so I feel like that's a good starting point. I'm going to start with taking 30 groups of 23. I know that 30 groups of 23 is going to be 690, and now I can subtract to find the difference. 6 minus 0 is 6. 6 minus 9 I cannot do, so I'm going to borrow from the 9. I'm going to make that an 8, and now this is going to become a 16. 16 minus 9 is 7, and 8 minus 6 is 2. So I'm looking at 246. Now, I can't take 20 groups of that because 20 groups of 23 would be 460. I don't have that much left. So really, this is kind of that point where I think about my one facts, which I can write down or take for granted, because certainly we know that 23 times 1 is 23, but I also know that 23 times 10 is going to be 230. That feels like a good place to go from here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a group of 10. 10 times 23 is going to be 230. When I subtract, I have 6 minus 0 is 6. I have 7 minus 3 is 4, and 2 minus 2 is 0. Now I remember one of those numbers was exactly 46, and here it is right here. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 groups of 23. 2 times 23 will use up all 46 of what is left, and there's no remainder. So my answer here will be 42. All right. Now, certainly showing the work as I have is a sufficient way to answer this question. It does say explain or show your reasoning. The last thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and just write it as an equation. 966 divided by 23 is what gave us our answer of 42. So this is really my conclusion statement that shows exactly where that answer lies in all the work that we just did. Let's go ahead down to number 2, and number 2 is a different problem because we have a context. It says a toolbox is shaped like a rectangular prism. The length is 14 inches and the height is 7 inches. If the volume of the toolbox is 1,176 cubic inches, what is the width? Explain or show your reasoning. So that's the very first thing that we need to do. Well, the very first thing that we need to do here is we're going to look at the dimensions that are given. We know we have a length of 14. We know we have a height of 7. What we're needing to find is the width, right? The other number that we're given is the overall volume. So if we remember what we learned in lesson, or rather unit 1, we know that volume equals length times width times height. And in this problem, we're given the volume. We know the volume to be 1,176. We know the length to be 14. We don't know the width. I'm going to leave that as a W. And we know that our height is 7. So the first thing that we need to know is what 14 times 7 equals. Well, I can write that down below, or I can break this apart. I know that 7 times 4 is 28. Here's my 8, carry my 2. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. So I know that 14 times 7 is going to be 98. So really, what I know here is that I should take this 1,176. I'm going to divide that by 98, and that is going to be what tells me the width, which is what I am needing to find, right? So let's go ahead and do some division now so that we can figure out what the width of the rectangular prism is. I'm going to put my division work in blue just to kind of set it apart from the thoughts that we already had as we've begun breaking down this word problem. So inside my division box, I will put my dividend, and I have 1,176. Now outside my division box, I have my 98. Now there's a lot of facts that would be helpful here, but right away I'm thinking about 98 times 10, right? 98 times 10 is going to be a 98 with a 0. That's a good starting point. So let's go ahead with that. 10 times 98, as we've already said, is going to be 980. When I subtract, I'll start with 6 minus 0 is 6. 7 minus 8, I can't do that, so I'm going to borrow, make that a 0, and I'm going to make this a 17. Now 17 minus 8 is going to give me 9. 0 minus 9 I cannot do, so I'm going to borrow from this. I'm going to make this a 10, and I have 10 minus 9 is 1. So really I have a new dividend I'm looking at that is 196. I could take one group of 98 here, but I'm thinking about two groups of 98. If I have 98 plus 98, two groups of 98, 8 plus 8 is 16, and take a look. 1 plus 9 is 19. So because of this, I know that 98 times 2 is going to give me 196, which is the fact that I need because I still have a dividend of 196. So I know to have two groups of 98, which will finish out this problem, use up all 196, and there's no remainder. So my answer here is 12. Now, let's go ahead and let's relate this back to the context of the question, because really this question was thinking about volume in a certain way. So we need to write just a little statement that relates it back to the toolbox. What does the 12 mean in relation to the toolbox? That's what we're being asked. So I'm going to write that the toolbox has a width because we were trying to find that particular dimension. It has a width of 12 what? What was the unit that these things were measured in? They were measured in inches, right? So it has a measure of 12 inches. Notice, boys and girls, with a simple sentence, almost like a caption for all the work that is shown, I have related it back to the toolbox and made sure that I've made very clear I know what the 12 means in relation to our context. Boys and girls, this finishes out our Section B checkpoint for Unit 4.